going to do hearings. And the reason I do that, and as I explained to my committee members at the beginning of this session, is I want to make sure that all of the committee members on here are extremely familiar with the legislation, educated, if you will, so that when we do make these decisions that impact our taxpayers with millions and millions of their dollars, that we're doing it from an area of understanding, and that we're not just, to use a term my grandmother used, we're not just willy-nilly taking care of business. And plus, it keeps Jim and Kelly from calling me, asking me, man, what the world was I thinking? But I would remiss if I didn't do two things, and I'm going to ask Senator Hickman if he would open up this meeting with a prayer. What number are you on? 6?
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, what a great day you've given us, Lord. You've given us a day to get up this morning, Lord, and you give us the air to breathe, Lord. And sometimes we feel like our boat is full of water, Lord, but you always provide us with the buckets to take it out, and we thank you for that. Lord, we ask you to please guide us, direct us, help us make decisions that are best for the great people of Georgia. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Senator. And also, the second thing I want to do is recognize Homer Bryson. For those of y'all who don't know, we recognize Homer Bryson for many reasons and for no reasons. But Homer may not be the longest serving state employee, but he has worked for more departments and agencies than any other state employee. So it's always glad to see him here. I'm sure he's looking for his next job. Because I am a wise chairman, I'm going to start with Senate Bill 41, which is being carried by our Vice Chair, Senator Huffstadler. And this is, we'll be working off LC 431756. This is the Tax Commissioners Retirement Fund of Georgia legislation. What number are you on, Chairman?
I'm on number 9. And this bill is in response to, again, something from many years ago where all the employees in the tax commissioner's office were in a plan, and many of them are still grandfathered in. Some of them are not, and this only affects the tax commissioners. I don't think Homer Bryson's ever been a tax commissioner. I could be wrong, but I don't think this actually affects him. But there are, to my understanding, 79 of them that don't have a retirement plan at all from their county or the state or anything, and some of them are grandfathered in. And this is an attempt to address that. And I believe that would be the last people of any constitutional officers in any location that don't have a retirement plan. However, I'm not ready to go forward today, and you're not ready to hear it. You're not ready to vote anyway today, from what I understand, because of the funding source. I'm still negotiating that a little bit on the funding source, and I had a couple of people that said they wanted to get the little budget out of the way first before we moved on that. So I'm trying to work out a compromise. It's not a lot of money in this. It's just some of it's just a matter of principle, I think, with some people on where the funding goes from. But I hope to have that by the next meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Anyone have any questions for the chairman pertaining to Senate Bill 41 with the Tax Commissioners Retirement Fund of Georgia? Chairman, Senator Hickman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think you actually said, which is right. I wrote in my notes $627,000. I think it's what you said last time about the funding amount.
Chairman Huffstadler, you said that there's a certain this would impact a certain number of tax commissioners, that the other ones are already part of a retirement system.
They're already part of a retirement system right now, correct?
Is the retirement system they're part of, is that the state retirement system?
It's in some cases it's the state, in some cases it's the county.
Okay. Now,
some counties provide it, some don't. I know like a big county such as Chatham County doesn't provide them to be in their local retirement, as an example.
Are there still inconsistencies throughout the state? I know I heard something a few years back about tax commissioners being able to find other sources of income within their role as tax commissioner.
There is, and you know, maybe on one hand I try to give another hand I take away. It was actually my bill last year that affected a couple of counties that I thought were trying to double dip on income, and were directed at not letting them get all the funds for something that maybe their employees were doing at the time. And there's I think there has been a negotiation between the tax commissioners and the Association of County Commissioners that have a compromise on that will be coming forth this session as well, that will set a statewide system on where those fees are directed to go when they do this.
Very good, thank you. I just want to make sure we had consistency. Senator Harrell, did you want to, what number are you on, ma'am?
I'm on 10. But yes, there have been concerns about, I know Gwinnett County has had a lot going on in this area because there was a bill, and then there were some court cases of tax commissioners being able to charge cities additional money for doing their tax bills, and then they get a return on that in their own salary, and it can push up the salaries of those tax commissioners pretty high.
Thank you. I want to take care of our tax commissioners, but I also want to make sure that our taxpayers aren't being taken advantage of in those processes. Any other questions? Do we have anybody here today that would like to speak to this legislation? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Now we'll move on to Senate Bill 267. Senator Rahman. We'll be working off LC 432279S, and it's dealing with the Teachers Retirement System of Georgia to allow retired members who elect an optional retirement allowance. Whenever you're ready, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to listening to my bill. This is a two-part bill, actually. This is a substitute that we had, the original bill. This is a bipartisan and simple, sounds simple, but this one we're dealing with the retiree, especially on teachers' retirement system, the people that work for a number of years. We want to make sure when they retire, they have a little peace of mind. What happened during the pandemics, currently, if you are a teacher's retirement system, once you retire, if you assign your beneficiary to your children, suppose you don't have a spouse, and what happened is, if you remarry, and then you cannot change your beneficiary. Currently, if you have a life-changing event, if you get divorced and whatever happened, you can assign. So in a situation like this, you assign to your children, and you remarried, and you cannot switch back. You cannot just assign your beneficiary to your current wife until the person dies, you know, your children, whoever you assign to. So this is like a terrible thing. So you have there's a few folks out there, when they retired, they didn't have a spouse, and later on, they remarried, in some instances, 8 or 10 years. And one particular instances, the gentleman reached out to me that he assigned his beneficiary to his daughter, don't even live in this country, in South America somewhere, for the last 10 years. And he cannot switch his beneficiary to his current wife, who is married for almost 10 years now. So this will correct the situation, basically, to have a peace of mind, for this retiree. Basically, that's the bottom line of this particular bill.
You know, my wife chastised me one time for calling her my current wife. I wish that were a joke. So, yeah, she's my one and only. But so any questions to the senator on this legislation? If I'm understanding you correctly, somebody retires, the beneficiary of their life insurance or
This
retirement?
is retirement insurance.
Okay,
Yeah.
is their child
Is the child.
because they're unmarried,
That's right.
and then later when they get married, they can't transfer it from the current beneficiary to the new spouse.
That's correct.
Okay. And now, is there a second part you want to discuss? on
Yes.
the legislation?
Second part is part of the judicial retirement system, which is a transfer of credible service from ERS to JRS. Basically, this bill provides an active member of JRS who earn credible service toward the appellate court judge's retirement plan under ERS may transfer of 1 or more years of such credible service from ERS to JRS. An individual who seeks to transfer such credible service must apply according to the Board of Trustees of JRS. Upon receipt of such application, the board must notify the Board of Trustees of ERS, which must then transfer to JRS an amount equal to the employer and employee contribution paid by on or behalf of such individual with interest for the years of credible service. Upon receipt of such fund from ERS, the board of JRS must credit the individual with 2 years of credible service in JRS for each year of service transfer from ERS. And also that deals with the age limit of the Supreme Court judges from 75 to 70 years, basically.
Does anyone have any questions for the senator? Yeah, what number?
So has this been through the process of being evaluated for fiscal cost? And
Yes, as part of this is actually a substitute. This came from our rule chairman. He had actually studied, done everything else. Because of the retirement bill, normally it has to be a couple of years. So that's part of this bill, you know. As far as I know, it's all vetted and actual study was done on this particular bill.
okay, so we would get that study before a vote,
Sure,
I guess.
definitely. I'll get that to you all.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to maybe ask the experts to address that, because I'm having a hard time in my mind thinking about somebody that works for ERS and then they transfer over to TRS and how that money would flow and how you would account for all that, and then much less a judicial system, because you know you got one set of money over here and how it transfers to another system. You may have a different retirement system.
Senator, I think what we're looking at is we're looking from ERS to JRS.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm saying. Yeah,
okay,
but
yeah.
same concept though. Same,
Right.
Yeah,
And-
same concept.
Yeah. And looking at it, is this only impacting appellate court judges?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you know how many appellate court judges there are who are currently former ERS employees who may have moved over to the judicial system for any particular reason, or
Be
moved
honest
into the position of an appellate court judge?
I do not have that number actually, but I can definitely provide that.
And that's
the
something I
number.
think that would help us be able to wrap our brain around it. And as we request the actuarial study, which Ms. Jackson says we'll have requested after this hearing, that'll give us somewhat of an idea of where we're coming from and the amount of money we're going to have to talk about to do this. And I know you are, this amendment was placed on your legislation. You and Chairman Mullis got together and discussed this. Was there an example given during that conversation of somebody leaving ERS, going over to JRS, and not being able to transfer?
I haven't
Okay.
asked that question specifically.
Okay.
You
Yeah,
know.
yeah, no, that's good.
I don't know.
That's the reason we're having the discussion. Do you have any other questions for the senator?
I got one more.
Okay. What? Nine.
If I could actually ask it of legislative counsel, tell me about the process here. Are you familiar with this? And
This, what number are you on?
Yes, so this would be a substitute to a retirement bill having a fiscal impact. The net effect, this has to be sent for a revised actual investigation by this committee before it can move forward in the legislative process, so before we report it out. If it's the will of the chair to send this for a revised actuarial investigation after this committee, that can be done. And the requirement there is that the state auditor's report would have to come back showing that the combined bill, this new substitute, would have a lower cost than the bill that went for actual investigation over the summer, which was the original $267. And then, once that report is back, committee can proceed and move the bill forward in the process.
And I think that on the original 267, you were in communication with TRS as far as looking at the cost? The original actuarial study was looking at the teacher's retirement system and the allowance of changing beneficiaries, and you received a study or numbers back from that, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then once that was received, you had further conversation and attempts to lower that number, correct?
That's correct.
So, to Legislative Council, would the number that lowered it, and then if we look at this, are we looking at the original actuarial number, or will we look at the actuarial number that from the conversations with TRS?
Right. So if the actuarial investigation came back from over the summer and it was $100 million, let's say, there were changes to the underlying bill of 267 that I expect would lower the cost of that $100 million. So there should be room under that cap, but I can't say for certain
Right.
until it's done. But it is possible that this would be considered a reduction in cost amendment, which would be permissible to this.
Thank you. That answer your question, Chairman?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to speak to 267? Anyone from TRS that would want to offer any information?
Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to try to answer any questions. We have worked with...
If you'd introduce yourself real quick for the committee. Yeah.
Buster Evans, Executive Director of Teachers Retirement System. Yes, we've worked with Senator Rahman on this several ways, try to find ways to reduce the cost. I think initially it was going to be roughly $700 million in terms of the cost, which would actually increase the annual contributions by about $58 million by our employers. We've identified a couple of things that we could do that would likely reduce that cost down to a number that we really don't know because we've not seen any actuarial review back. So we've worked through a couple of obstacles. There is one remaining obstacle that is that I don't know that there's a fix with, to be totally honest with you. Our plan is a 401A approved plan by the Internal Revenue Service. They have specific guidelines regarding minimum distributions, just like you would under your 401K or 403B or 457. We have met with our IRS compliance attorney, and basically she says there's basically the plan would not allow for a change of this particular nature, in that it would not meet those minimum distribution guidelines set forth by the IRS. We've met with the senator in regards to this. If there's a fix out there, we've not identified it, but we do think that it would be an issue impacting the current IRS plan that is approved, establishing the teachers' retirement system plan for our teachers.
And this, what you're discussing is his attempt to find a way to allow someone to transfer the beneficiary, in his example, from a child to a new spouse.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And so the initial number you said was 70 million?
700 million, I believe, was the
million.
initial.
So Ledge Council was being very optimistic when they said 100 million.
But the change that was made very likely would substantially reduce that. We've not seen that because the language in the substitute bill would allow for a reduction in that benefit, of which it would basically, you would have to be, because you can't perpetually continue to change a beneficiary down the road and allow for continued sustainability of a retirement system.
Absolutely. Any questions for TRS? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We'll be continuing to work on this as we move forward, and look forward to working with you and your favorite rules chair. This may be a typo, but this next one is HB. I'm not sure what the H stands for. 263. if we could hold down the comments from the gallery, I'd greatly appreciate it, Your Honor. House Bill 263, Representative Scoggins, from the 14th. We're going to be working off LC 432244S.
And I want to introduce you to Homer Bryson. He is our probate judge's retirement fund manager now, so he's got a new job.
Representative, Mr. Bryson is the mascot of the retirement, the Senate Retirement
right?
Committee. We're very familiar with Mr. Bryson. Chairman Huffsteller and myself have adopted him.
Is that right?
Yes, sir. If you would go ahead and present your legislation, sir.
Thank you, sir. As I mentioned, this is a House Bill 263 LC 43244S, and this bill is relates to the judges of the probate court retirement fund. This bill only does one thing. It would allow for a more current mortality table for determining benefits for survivors of retired probate judges. The current table that we're using was from 1951, so we need to update our mortality table, and that's the only thing this bill does.
Mr. Bryson,
He's
anything to add? The current death tables used throughout the throughout your fund, are all the other ones more current than
Yes, they are. This is the only one that's older than me, Mr. Chairman.
We need to check that.
How in the world did that happen?
It's that, you know, when this was originally drafted back in the day, that it was probably, that was the current table at the time, and it was just adopted in the legislation, and it's just has ridden that way for decades now and just hasn't been changed, and we're just trying to
In what
get
what
to
year
use
was
current
it?
information.
1951.
So I'm thinking the mortality rate 1951 was what, 50, 47?
Probably.
I think 60 might have been stretching it back then.
Yeah.
Any questions for the bill's author or for Mr. Homer Bryson? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman.
Chairman.
Thank you, committee.
The next one is HB 385, Representative Blackman, LC 432127 ECS. Is Representative Blackman here? Representative, do you need a minute to catch your breath?
Just the nature calling there, Mr. Chairman. I'm
That is
sorry.
way too much information,
Yes, sir.
Representative. I do appreciate it, though. While you're catching your breath, this is HB 385 LC 432127 ECS. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I believe that was correct. 2127 ECS.
Yes, sir. All right, this is on continued benefits for certain rehired TRS beneficiaries.
Correct.
Okay, if you would present your legislation, please.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 385 has kind of been deemed the return to work bill that would allow our public school teachers to return to the classroom full-time. Right now, they're allowed to do that part-time only, but with certain restrictions. And it has been added to the bill that there would be a 12-month waiting period required, and that takes the actual actuarial study and impact of TRS down to 0. It would require the system to otherwise return dollars into TRS upon rehiring this teacher full-time. It can only be done after a 30-year minimum within the system, and allow them to collect their retirement and move back into full service. It's only in the 3 highest need areas within that RISA, particular RISA. And there is a sunset. I'd also add that there is a performance audit that is included, and this applies only to classroom teachers. So a number of things that would put guardrails on it, but allow certain public school teachers. And I don't know about y'all, but I, having been to public school and remembering every teacher that I ever had, I would love to give each and every one of them the opportunity to continue to make a difference in the lives of their students upon retirement, if the district so allowed.
Any questions from the committee members?
Thank you, Mr. Representative Shaw for being here. Help me out just a second, Mr. Blackman. And I totally agree with it. I mean, because we've all had teachers that were just stellar. Yeah, I can think of Ms. Velma Kemp, who was my algebra and trig teacher. Still, a lot of what she taught us, I still think about. So when they come back, when they retire, they're getting retirement, and they come back, are they still receiving a retirement?
They
over
do.
retirement,
They
and
get
then
to
they'll participate in the system again?
They put their 30 years in. If they so choose, they can collect their retirement, retire, sit out for 12 months, a minimum of 12 months. And if the system wishes to rehire them back in the classroom, and they fall into that criteria within the 3 highest need areas within that RESA, that they could go back to work in that classroom. And I think, based on shortages within our workforce, including the teacher professional environment, then I think this is maybe even more needed now than it was a couple of years ago when we looked at this.
And those 3 areas are science, math, and?
They're unique to each RESA, so they're able to decide within that region what those highest needs are, so that you're not, it could change from Southwest Georgia to, the Metro Atlanta area, depending on where you're at. It could be different.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
I got
Chairman
Hufstedler, if
Hufstedler.
I could. Glad to have my counterpart from the House over here, the Chair of Ways and Means. In our Finance Committee, we quite often put in sunsets, and so I'm really excited to see a sunset from Ways and Means Chairman over here.
We did that just for you, Mr. Chairman.
But you say it would repeal if it's not going to work. Is that basically what you're saying? I'm trying to get that.
The sunset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think obviously we're putting this back into code now, and any kind of sunset like that would allow us to revisit it. Certainly on a regular basis, but even more serious basis, I suppose, depending on how this works for our public schools.
And so those that have had 30 years and they retire and then they come back, does this affect their TRS benefits?
I'm sorry, great question. No, this does not affect their benefits. They cannot raise their benefits any further, but there is a requirement to go contribute into TRS upon the rehire with no future liability.
Okay. And then you've got a 12-month waiting period. My county up there, Floyd County, Rome, Georgia, borders Alabama. When they get their 30 years in, they go to the county over there in Alabama and start teaching. So I almost wish we didn't have to wait the 12 months so that they don't go over to Alabama, but if that needs to be part of it.
It's my understanding that there is the potential that those that might stay on beyond 30, if they're allowed to roll right into retirement, that could adversely impact TRS in a manner that encourages a little earlier retirement than otherwise they would. So the 12-month waiting period was a request that we added in order to bring the impact down to 0.
Okay. And maybe, from Buster at some point, if we could hear from him.
That's
Okay.
I looked at him a couple times to see if his hair was growing, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I appreciate that. I think this is a good approach.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Blackman, is after they wait the 12 months now and they're currently drawing their TRS retirement, is the teacher paying into TRS, or is the district paying into TRS, or both, which is the normal process prior to the 30-year retirement?
Both sets of contributions would have to go in, but the system can pay them both.
The system being the district, the school system.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The school system can pay both if they wish to hire the teacher back. So there would be a requirement to pay both the employee and the employer contribution, but it could be made entirely by the system at that point. I would also make mention, and I should have done this with your question, if you'll allow me, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
You can go part-time during that 12-month period if you so choose as well. So that's an option if you before you come back full-time.
So the teacher in the system will be drawing a salary from the school district and their retirement from TRS simultaneously, correct?
You are correct. Yes, sir.
Right. But what they will not be doing is increasing their benefit of TRS.
Correct.
So when they decide to leave the second time, then their TRS continues on as it has, and all they miss is the monthly salary that they were earning after they went back to work. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Just as if they went to work for another entity outside of the system.
Absolutely, but we're saving a tremendous amount of money by bringing a seasoned educator into the classroom and not having to go get a new hire and raise them through the system, which we know is much more expensive than finding an experienced employee. Right.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Point. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from committee? Thank you, Representative. If we could have our guru from TRS to step up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Let me just give you a quick overview and answer any questions that I can. First of all, we really realistically can look at this bill from both the TRS level as well as the school system level, and I'll speak to it from both sides. Representative Chairman Blackman has been working on this now for several years, and it's gone through several changes and iterations. But the bottom line, it really can be a win-win for TRS, a win-win for our teachers, win-win for parents, and a win-win for school administrators. We occasionally have administrators have a need, let's say a math teacher, that they need to find somebody to fill out the rest of the year. And the only person that they might be able to find who's got the experience that they know that they can count on is one of our retirees. The law currently allows for them to return to work 49% or less and continue to draw their retirement benefit. This particular bill gives that win for that school system that is able to acquire and put in place a seasoned teacher to fill that position. If I'm a student in that classroom, it's a win for me because I'm going to be able to get a teacher that has got that kind of experience and may not miss perhaps all my junior year of calculus by having a great teacher. If I'm a parent, I'm also happy about this because I want my child to have the very best teacher that I can possibly have. Looking at it from a TRS standpoint, because it does allow us to continue to receive the contribution from the system and the teacher that would be paid by the district, it allows us not to miss any employer and employee contributions that we would otherwise miss. Let's say if that same slot were filled by two different 49% employees that we don't get anything. So we actually think it's a good bill with a lot of reasons to support it. It is a part of the governor's education pipeline to make sure that we've got qualified teachers teaching in the classroom. And from both my experience as an educational administrator as well as teachers retirement system, we feel like this is something that we can enthusiastically say, if you like it, we like it as well.
Thank you. Any questions for the guru of TRS? Thank you, sir. All right, and this will be on the agenda next Wednesday for the vote for Representative Blackman. And if anybody has any questions between now and then, I would greatly appreciate if you'd get them together. Final is House Bill 780, Representative Leverett. And we'll be working off LC 431721. Representative, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the chairman scheduling this matter for a hearing and appreciate the consideration by the members of the committee. This bill deals with the statewide business court, which was established, I believe, 4 years ago now by constitutional amendment that was voted on by the citizens of the state of Georgia to create a court that had statewide trial court jurisdiction. So this judge is seated in the Nathan Deal Center just down the hill here, and he can hear cases from any county in Georgia, and he can conduct trials and hears motions and does all the things more that a superior court judge would do, but yet he has statewide jurisdiction, more like an appellate court judge. This bill affects that. There's only one judge that's been appointed to that court as of yet. And this bill would change the retirement system to which he is assigned, or other members of that court, if there ever are any, would be assigned. It moves them from the judicial retirement system to the employee's retirement system, which might seem a bit odd that we're moving a judge from judicial retirement system to employment retirement system. But I suppose the short answer to that is that's actually what we have done with all judges of the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court. They're in ERS. I think it's a separate division in there. And he is actually assigned, as everyone in that court, in the statewide business court, is assigned to the Court of Appeals. Because like the judges on the Court of Appeals and Supreme Court, he has statewide jurisdiction. Most other trial judges just are limited to a particular circuit in which they sit. And so everyone in his office is in the Court of Appeals administratively. This would place him in a retirement system that is more consistent with the administrative assignment of that court. And I am told it would be slightly more beneficial to him personally. And Mr. Chairman, I know as someone who has dealt with lawyers in the past, this court is a unique one in that you are dealing with extremely high value, intensely litigated, very expensive cases. And even as a lawyer, you're dealing, every issue is being contested, every issue is being briefed. And I would think we would rather be held down and beaten than try to deal with the things this judge has to deal with day in and day out. So I certainly think he earns the money. And to recruit someone for this position, they have to come from a fairly high, sophisticated practice that is financially remunerative, and want to be able to attract people into that position should we need additional judges, or should at some point he decide he's had to quote Porter Wagner, he's enjoyed about as much of that as he can stand. And so we believe this is good, and we think in all honesty, this is really the system he should have been put in to start with, and so we're just trying to fix that.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for the representative? Anything from ERS? Senator Huffstetler, you had a question?
Number 9. So you got the Court of Appeals, the Supreme Court, and this will be putting them into just their plan. This will be the only judge that you'll be doing that to.
Correct.
And I do know, I mean, you're right, those are expensive. I was looking at that the other day. He's having 0.8 trials per week, I think, was average out to. It's over $40,000 a case that's costing the state there because of our expenses if you divide that into the trials. And so, I mean, to me, that I've got a little bit of concern on the cost of that system anyway, as few trials are going through that. But I guess we'll get more information on the numbers and what this does to it and everything.
Could I address those concerns,
Please.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So I would note that part of the reason his caseload per case is not that high and his trial load is not that high is because you can opt out. So if generally the way you get into the statewide business court is I sue and I choose that as the venue as the plaintiff, and the defendant can opt out and have the case heard in the Superior Court that would be appropriate venue under the Georgia Constitution. And so right now people often opt out. But while he doesn't have a large number of cases like most of our Superior Court judges do, as I mentioned, these are very intensely, tediously contested cases, and he does have quite a large workload in terms of motions and briefs and issuing orders. He told me he was working on I think an 80 or 90 page order, which would, that's rather daunting. As to the cost issue, there is a cost to the state. My understanding is when we move from one existing retirement system to the other, one person, there is a savings to JRS of about $8,000 a year, and there is a savings, and then there's a cost to ERS of about $15,000. So I believe the net is, and I may be getting my 8s and 7s mixed up, but the net cost is I think $7,000 or $8,000 per year for him. And of course, to the extent any additional judges are appointed, they would start out in the new system, so there would be no additional cost.
Right. And Senator Huffstetler, the 40,000 number you're talking about is the overhead, the cost.
Yeah,
of conducting the trials per
there's
week?
a $3,000 fee per applicant to have the trial there, but yet the cost is over $40,000, so it seems a little bit out of whack. You know.
Oh, that the filing fee is
the filing fee. I mean, maybe those should be higher or something, but it's a pretty expensive court for.
Well, I distinctly remember the bloody fight that was fought over business court to begin with, and I think we all enjoyed the bumps and bruises there. And I do appreciate Senator Huffstetter always looking at the bottom line. I think that brings everything back to reality when we understand that we're basically, by doing this, we're laying in an additional, well, if you're saying the $7,000 is net cost, because currently we're paying $8,000.
Well, I don't purport
into
to have the
JRS
chairman's
and then
knowledge of
15,000.
actuarial letters, but the
Yeah.
savings to JRS is about 8, and the cost to ERS would be 15 per year, amortized out.
Okay.
So I'm assuming it's valid from a mathematical perspective to deduct one from the other and come with a net cost to the state of about, I think it's 7,000.
Okay, so overall, currently with the person in there, I think theoretically we could say a $1,000 savings.
Well, no, 15 minus
Oh,
7.
no, 15 minus
I think it's
7.
7, it's a
I've got it
cost.
upside down. It's an
Yeah.
$8,000 to the
It
positive
is
side.
a cost, yes.
Yeah, positive if we're adding, and negative if we're thinking about it from a budgetary side.
Has there been an actuarial study done on this, or?
There has, yes, sir. That's what I was quoting from. I hope I was doing so.
Okay, I just didn't see it attached to the bill, so I didn't know if it had been provided.
It has. It's on the website. I know as a previous version.
Could you do me a favor and make sure, send a copy of the PDF have it sent to Ms. Jackson, and she'll make sure everybody on the committee gets it, and then next Wednesday when we're ready to vote, everybody
Absolutely,
will have
Mr.
looked through it. Yes.
Be happy to do that.
Any further questions from the committee? Senator Hickman?
Yeah, Representative Dever, tell me, why are we calling it statewide business court?
Well, I think it was viewed as a way to avoid clogging local superior courts up with these very complex, time-consuming, it's basically business litigation.
So it is business litigation.
For the most part,
So
it's
it's
all
not
business
murder
litigation.
trials and all that. Oh, okay, that's what.
He doesn't have any criminal jurisdiction.
Okay.
It's just it's sort of
Okay.
patterned after the Delaware courts of chancery that are supposed to be for business. We're trying to make, we're #1 state to do business, and this is another way to attract.
Yeah,
I
we
got you.
we were having problems at the time with a lot of business cases being taking long periods of time to get in front of the judge because of all the other cases, Superior Court judges. So there was some concern at the time that individuals were going to be pushed up into Fulton County and have all their cases heard by judges they don't know. But like he said, we worked it out where they could opt out if they did not want to. But these are intricate cases, very detailed cases, that once they did get in front of a Superior Court judge, that Superior Court judge would be locked down for long periods of time. And in some cases, Superior Court judges were not necessarily
Trained.
experts and trained in those areas. So it's a
I
very
see.
unique
I see.
court system and very positive. So
yeah.
it worked out really well.
Thank you.
Anything else from any committee member? Okay, then we'll look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee.
Anything
Appreciate
else
it.
from any other committee member? If not, well, we stand adjourned. Thank you.